Hey guys, I'd like to welcome you to the Kortex Media Podcast, where we navigate the fast-paced world of automotive and more. I'm your host, Korson Schmidt, founder at Kortex Media, a growth partner helping automotive companies grow by creating custom-tailored growth plans for you to hit your goals. Today, I have Ryan Yamauchi, an industry pioneer who's been shaping the vehicle subscription and automotive business landscape since 2013. With over 700 vehicles placed on subscription using an asset-light model, Ryan is dedicated to helping dealerships embrace innovative mobility solutions through VYCL. He's passionate about blending personal relationships and transformative technology to create accessible, scalable options for consumers, always betting on self-belief and the power of innovation. It's great to have you on, Ryan.
Thanks, Korson. I appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, no worries. Before truly diving into it, getting super in depth with what you do you mind giving us kind of a little overview? Take us through your early career, what that looked like, and how you transitioned into vehicle subscription model.
Yeah, I actually fell backwards into auto in general. What I've kind of found over the years is not many people start out their careers wanting to get into auto. And for me, it was just a great circumstance. Coming out of the credit crisis of 2008, 2009, I was looking for new opportunities. And I had a friend who was in the business. He ran a independent auto dealership here in Honolulu, Hawaii, where I'm based out of. And he had this idea, and he said, I've got this idea of kind of a short-term leasing, maybe type of fractional ownership type of a business. Are you interested? And at the time, I was like, not really. That's not really what I was thinking about doing. But I've always had kind of an entrepreneurial bent. I've always enjoyed, business planning and taking a look at different opportunities. And so come around to 2012, late 2012, early 2013, I ran into him again. I actually walked into his dealership. I wanted to get a car. And we sat and talked about it again, as most opportunities happen in life. Really kind of walked backwards into it, and honestly can't be more thankful for that now, looking back on it now over 12 years ago.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And was he part of the beginning of this vision that you guys
He,
had?
he really was. I actually consider him to be the pioneer in the space. At the time I didn't know anything about it. I was an employee at his business, and he had this vision of what he thought. At the time, we didn't even refer to it as vehicle subscription. I think he looked at it more like short-term leasing. But what the opportunity, I think, was built out of more like customer retention, right? In an auto, you're always trying to build this customer base and recurring customer base. And I think what's really interesting about being here in Honolulu is we're really communal. Like in Hawaii, we're a small community. We know everybody who lives in our community. And you always want to take care of each other. And so even if he wanted, to help some of his past clients, he still had to make a living as well. He still had to run a business. So what he developed was this really unique program where essentially it started out like a guaranteed buyback, right? You came in, you bought a car from him, and he essentially said, if you bring this car back to me in a year, I guarantee you that I'm going to buy it back from you at this price. So that was really kind of the genesis of what we in the way that I look at vehicle subscription. That's really where it started, 2012, 2013. It's always about putting the customer first. He did an outstanding job doing that. He built a great company, a great model on it. And when he brought me on board to really kind of shape it, he and I worked together for the better part of 13 years into what now we call vehicle subscription.
Amazing. For
Yeah.
audience members who might not be super familiar with VYCL or vehicle subscription in general, do you mind giving us kind of a high-level overview of what the difference is between subscription model, leases, etc., just so viewers have an idea of what it actually is and the details about it?
Yeah, I think to start with VYCL, that's the name of my consultancy. I started it earlier this year, And really what I was doing was wanting to take the things that we had learned over the past 12 or 13 years in our version of vehicle subscription and find out if in fact we could take those same concepts and we could apply them at dealerships across the country. What my former employer, where I got my start, was focused at being here in Hawaii. I really wanted an opportunity to take a look at what we could do outside the boundaries of the state. Vehicle subscription became something that I've become really passionate about, and really it's about access, right? So if you start thinking about just access to quality transportation, that's really what we need. That's what the community needs. That's what the general consumer needs. But as a traditional, big industry, automotive has always been more about retail. I think when it started getting into leasing, mid to late 70s into the early 80s, that was a retention play. It was about trying to retain customers, getting people to buy into or use vehicles at maybe a more affordable price point, right? They're looking at their monthly price points. But really, it was just another form of access. And I think what we've moved into now more recently, the term subscription, I think, is thrown around relatively loosely. You could take a look at companies like Netflix, which is subscription. Amazon has subscription. Almost everything, every app on my phone is tied to some sort of subscription. And really, what that tells me, I think what it tells just people generally, in the consumer space, is that we want access to things, but we've really kind of gotten away from the value of ownership to it, right? So in my parents' generation, ownership was really, really important. We want to own the home we're in. We want to own the vehicle that we're driving. But especially in automotive, we've been told for such a long time that it's not really an appreciable asset, right? Every time we purchase a vehicle, the day we drive it off the lot, it's really losing value day after day. But in many opportunities and many times, you're making this payment on something that's a depreciating value. So I think where the two concepts really merged and fit well, subscription, access, and automotive, is if people truly just need quality transportation. They just need a way to get to and from work. They need a way to take their kids to soccer practice. They need a way to get around town. They may not necessarily live in a town or an environment with great mass transit, or they live in a situation where they've got to drive some distance. I think what vehicle subscription has always meant to me is it's for daily drivers, but it's just about access to quality transportation, right? It's not fractional ownership. It's not the aspirational guy who wants to drive the Ferrari on the weekend, right? We've kind of run through that. We've had great businesses like Zipcar, right? These hourly rate type usage where maybe you catch mass transit into the city and you need a car for an hour, you take a Zipcar. And it's certainly not traditional rental where it's more transient. You're on vacation, you're on holiday, and you need a vehicle for 2 or 3 days. This is just another way for people to get daily driving opportunities and quality transportation. And then when they don't need it, they don't have to pay for it, right? That's the twist I think that subscription adds that maybe traditional leasing and certainly traditional retail doesn't have. I use the car when I need it. I drive it. I can count on it that it's going to be a quality vehicle for me to get where I need to go. And that if my life changes, I can simply return that vehicle. I can turn my subscription off. And that's, I think, what's unique to vehicle subscription in the automotive space.
For sure. And back to what you said, you see Netflix, you see Amazon, they all have a subscription-based model. And that's the way that our society is going, just from looking at those bigger companies. They're all pushing towards subscription-based. We used to have to go buy DVDs, buy movies, etc. But now we pay a subscription-based to Apple Music, to Netflix, to Amazon Prime to watch these movies. And it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same thing with everyone. It makes it convenient. It comes out at the end of the month. You don't even see it because you already know what's coming out. You don't even look because you don't want to look how many buildups you have at the end of the month for subscription models. But it just makes it easy, makes it convenient. You get paid, you pay your subscription. Super convenient, especially for those people that don't need to spend or don't want to spend 40 grand on a vehicle. They can just easily pay the subscription, have that vehicle. It's going to get them from point A to B without any questions asked. It's going to be It's going to be a solid vehicle at the end of the day. You're getting a newer vehicle. Now with those subscription-based models, how does the repair process work? Does the person renting the vehicle have to say it needs brakes when the person, I wouldn't say, sorry, I didn't mean renting, but when they're during the subscription, if it needed brakes at that time, would that be the consumer that's paying for that, or would that be the dealership that's paying for that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that kind of goes to the core of while vehicle subscription I think is growing in adoption. One of the unique things about vehicle subscription is that it's not very well defined, right? So what I believe in is the asset light model. And the reason why I believe in the asset light model is because I think it keeps traditional auto dealers central to the process, right? Some people have tried different versions where they open their own brick and mortar, they acquire their own inventory that's available for subscription. But the carrying costs in that model tend to be a little bit too far-reaching, especially since adoption itself hasn't quite taken hold. The model that I believe in, again, I always refer to it as asset light, allows a traditional dealer to take their inventory, what they currently have in their inventory, not necessarily acquire anything, but use it for a subscription. It gives them another avenue in which to monetize their inventory, right? So one of the things that you've probably heard over the years is aged inventory is a killer for auto dealerships, because they're either paying carrying costs, curtailment, financing. It's sitting on their lot. Not only are they paying on it, but it's taking up space, physical space that they can't use to bring in new inventory. And so if they can't traditionally sell it through retail, traditionally lease it through the traditional leasing methods, oftentimes what they'll do is they'll sell it at a loss, or they'll just take it to the auction, oftentimes realizing a loss as well. And I think what the version of subscription that I believe in, that I'm always promoting in this asset light model, just gives them another avenue, right? What if you can take that same unit, put it out on subscription, generate some recurring revenue rather than recurring costs, and have this opportunity there in your inventory. And to your question about repairs, it is something that the vision that I have of vehicle subscription takes into consideration. I consider it worry-free driving, because that asset, that vehicle, is still tied to the dealership that they got it from. I'm glad you corrected yourself when you said a rental. I'm always trying to get people to separate the two, and it's a little difficult at times because we're just ingrained to think about rental. But in my version of vehicle subscription, it's worry-free driving. So you'd pay, and the money that you're paying ensures that your brakes need to be changed, your AC goes out, your transmission needs to be fixed. That's not a concern of the driver, right? The driver is subscribing to the use of a vehicle, and their guarantee is that the use of that vehicle will always be there. Now, the counterpoint to that is, and it's one of the things that often needs a little bit further explaining, is it's not a specific vehicle that they're subscribing to, right? It could be a class of vehicle. It could be a selection of vehicles. So very similarly to how someone goes and rents a vehicle when they go on vacation, they may go to the rental counter and they may say mid-size sedan similar to, and they'll show you a picture of a Ford or something to that effect. And when they come out and they give you a Chevy, or they come out and give you a Honda, you very rarely see people at the rental counter saying, that's not what the picture is here. That's not, I don't want this vehicle. Yeah. Because in that rental environment, we are accustomed to driving a similar like vehicle. And the same thing goes for vehicle subscription, at least the way that I see vehicle subscription, is that someone is subscribing to a class of vehicle, and they're subscribing to the use of that vehicle, maybe not necessarily specific to that vehicle. And why that works well for dealers is, a dealer may have a vehicle in the inventory that they haven't moved for 45, 60, 90 days, and they want to get it on a subscription. Well, what happens if 30 days from now, they've got a customer that comes in uniquely on a vehicle and says, hey, do you have one of these? Well, that dealer can actually go back to that subscriber and say, hey, we've got an opportunity for you. We'll switch you out into another vehicle. You still have the same quality transportation. You still have all the perks of use of vehicle, return when you need to, drive worry-free. But now they've got access to that inventory. They didn't have to go and buy another unit or acquire another unit. It gives them that flexibility to truly own and manipulate their inventory. And it always ensures that the driver, the subscriber, always has a quality vehicle that they're behind the wheel of. I think, it's kind of the best of both worlds.
For sure. Especially with dealers, the longer you have a vehicle sitting in the lot, the longer you're spending money, the longer you're wasting money as a dealer. So if you can keep things cycling, keep things moving, you're going to bring more revenue in towards the dealer. And just adding that next model in, like you said, you're not taking away from the others. You're not replacing anything. You're just adding value. You're bringing in almost a new version that gives even consumers another way to look at it as well. Maybe they don't want to lease a vehicle, they don't want to finance a vehicle, but they want something in between as a subscription model. Maybe maybe they're avid travelers and they travel to Hawaii every winter, so they subscribe for a vehicle when they're in Hawaii over the winter, and then when they're back in North America, United States, or Canada for the summer, they have to subscribe for another vehicle, so they don't have to add that payment to lease a vehicle or have a huge bill of renting a vehicle, because that's for more short term at the end of the day. So it's a great that's like a perfect situation.
Point. Yeah, it's a great point. I think what we experienced here in Hawaii, because obviously, we are a destination for travelers, is that we had a lot of what we would call, part-time residents, transient residents. They're not quite here for the weekend. Maybe they're here for 2 or 3 months. Maybe they're here for 4 months throughout the year. Maybe it's the winter months where they're from. And they were doing one of two things. They were renting a vehicle, as you mentioned, and paying daily rental rates, but paying it for multiple months, which is just not cost effective. But at one time, it may have been the only option for them. Or they were buying vehicles, and what they were doing was just storing it, in their short, long-term parking or what have you. Maybe they owned a timeshare or a condo here, and they were parking that vehicle, but it sat there. But they were making payments on it in many cases. And so what vehicle subscription allowed them to do, to your point, is you fly in, you pick up your car, you drive it for 2 or 3 months. When it's time to leave, you return that vehicle, no questions asked. You get on the plane and you go back.
For sure.
And so I think, we always knew that was going to be something unique to Hawaii because of our geography. But the other two things that we experienced over what I would call really just a proof of concept, the testing of the model over the years, was the military, right? Hawaii has a very large military population. And what they would do when they came in is they would get, a transition check or some type of stipend. So when they got here, they'd buy a vehicle. Oftentimes they were allowed to ship one vehicle, but they were a transitioning family. They needed 2. But when they got rotated out, oftentimes they were left with this vehicle that was now worth less than what they owed on it. And they couldn't, because of the rules, they couldn't ship it to their next destination because they were only allowed to ship one vehicle. So what ends up happening? They sell it at a loss. They leave it on what we would call a lemon lot here, waiting to be sold. They run into problems. They run into, they have to get it repossessed because they can't make their payments anymore. The litany of things that you go through when you're left with this vehicle that you don't have a lot of flexibility with. What we found, especially with our military population, was they love vehicle subscription because they come in. Maybe they're here for a year, maybe they're here for 2 years. They use that vehicle while they're here. They don't have to necessarily worry about all the maintenance, upkeep. And when they get rotated out or they get deployed, they simply return that vehicle. So it fits that lifestyle, really, really well. And obviously, over the years, you have the gig workers in the gig economy that do some of this remote working. It certainly fits their needs as well. But really, what the market kind of pressure tested us with was COVID, because we had a lot of subscribers who, obviously, because of our model, are daily drivers, but they lost their jobs, or they went from office workers to remote workers, and all of a sudden they didn't need their vehicle. Historically, they had these vehicles that they were making payments on, or they owned outright. And they now didn't have a use for it, but they still had the liability of owning that vehicle. As subscribers, they just came back in and dropped off their keys, started their remote work, started their hybrid work. In some unfortunate cases, because they lost their jobs, were waiting to look for an opportunity. But one of the things that they didn't have to worry about was making that car payment,
For
right?
sure.
And then when their life got back on track, when things kind of, even themselves out, they didn't have to worry again about going to buy a car or qualifying for a new loan. They just came back and picked up a car because they were already subscribers, right? And they just started making their payments. And I think that that's the one thing that vehicle subscription allows, and really what it promotes is that flexibility. It's certainly not for everyone. And that's not what we tell people. I don't tell dealers who I'm consulting with, trying to get them, helping them build their subscription businesses. I don't tell them that this is the revolutionary thing that's going to change their model. They're never going to sell a car and never going to lease a car again. It's just something that you can offer that fills a need, and maybe it increases your sales by your revenue by 10%. Maybe it's 5%, but it just gives you that opportunity to have another channel to touch your customers. And you can use it to build your traditional business. So you can take someone into vehicle subscription. They can drive that vehicle for 6 months, 12 months, maybe longer. Maybe they find they like it enough and they want to buy it. Well, you can transition them right out of subscription into a traditional sale. So there's no guardrails that preclude you from doing a lot of different things. It's just another opportunity. And I think that as the adoption gains, I think that the adoption comes from the consumer standpoint. As more and more consumers become aware of vehicle subscription, they go into their traditional dealership, they go online, and they say, "Do you offer subscription?" The more opportunities there are going to be for dealers to really take that opportunity, take a chance, I'd say, and start building out that sector of their business.
For sure. And it keeps good relationships as well. If someone comes and say they want to subscribe to a vehicle for a bit, you're going to have that relationship. They're going to keep, because you might have to go pick up their vehicle 4 times in the 4 months they're subscribing to the vehicle. The 6 months they're subscribed. So you're making that interaction. As long as you keep that in goodwill, keep the client happy, the subscriber happy, they're going to keep coming back for a vehicle to subscribe to. And a lot of great points you had there.
Yeah. There's there I want to say always, but obviously more recently there's this push to green. And I think that what people think about when they think about green, and as it pertains to automotive, is always EV, right? It's well, this is the green alternative. We're going to go EV, and I certainly am a believer in EV, and I think that it's a great segment. It's growing, and I think that's outstanding on many levels. But one of the things that people forget is that we love to drive, right? People love to drive cars, and as much as some of the larger EV brands have done a great job, growing their market segment, people still like to drive combustion engine vehicles,
For sure.
good, bad, or otherwise. So one of the things that I think vehicle subscription offers is it offers an extended life period to keep traditional combustion engine vehicles on the road, right? And that's not to say that you can't subscribe to an EV or a hybrid, but if I keep that vehicle in my subscription rotation, and you're driving it today, 6 months from now, somebody else is driving it, 6 months down the road, somebody else is driving it. You're keeping that vehicle on the road. You're stretching that life cycle of that vehicle in its own way, maybe not as quote unquote green as an EV might be, but it certainly helps rather than, getting these vehicles off the street. It keeps them on it a little bit longer. Because of the nature of subscription, you've got dealers that are taking better care of their inventory because of subscription, because it's part of the program. And so these vehicles are staying on the road longer, higher mile vehicles, right? And a subscriber is not necessarily as concerned with a higher mileage vehicle in the subscription world because they know that vehicle is covered, right? They're still driving worry-free. Yeah. And so I think that these are all little nuances to vehicle subscription that give it a chance to take a little bit larger place in the industry going down the line.
For sure. I just have one question,
Sure.
more on the pricing based.
Yeah.
What's it compared to a regular lease pricing or finance pricing? Is it comparable? Is it well cheaper? Is it what does that compare like for? Obviously, it varies from state to location to dealership itself. But what's like an average? What's like an average subscription price for a vehicle?
I'll answer your question, but I'm glad you brought this up because I think one of the largest pain points we have in the vehicle subscription industry is the financing component, right? My view of vehicle subscription is what I would consider debt free, right? So it's not a traditional loan type of environment. And there again is where we kind of lean into the rental model. When I go to a rental counter at an airport to get a car to drive for the weekend, nobody pulls my FICO score. They don't ask me for my income or my assets. They simply take my driver's license. Oftentimes they're scrubbing it against my motor vehicle records to make sure that I'm a safe driver. But there's no debt facility associated with that driver. And I think that in that same vein, once we get traditional lending, to view subscription a little bit more in that way, where we're underwriting the asset and not necessarily underwriting the driver, that's when the true vehicle subscription adoption takes place. Because I believe that vehicle subscription is debt free. Now, that's not payment free, it's debt free. It means I'm not taking on a loan, right? And that's a lot of the things that I think have been a limiting factor in both traditional leasing and traditional retail, is that you have the underserviced population who need quality transportation oftentimes maybe aren't the most qualified to get it. So therefore they're paying much higher interest rates in the traditional way of financing, and it just becomes this vicious cycle. And I'm certainly not trying to be too preachy about it. The lending is what lending is, and it'll always be. And I certainly know that there's risk, and lenders obviously are underwriting lots of the risk. But if we can get traditional auto lenders to underwrite the asset in vehicle subscription rather than the individual driver, I think that's when the true adoption happens. So where I've seen success, and to answer your question about pricing, where I've seen market pricing be competitive, if not even better than traditional lease payments or retail payments, is when we have a financing facility that is underwriting the asset. And at that point, you're dealing with price points, monthly price points, subscription price points that are right in line with fair retail and fair leasing. There are different subscription models out there. You have what I would be a membership model, and I think that's one of the membership model is where I come from, where you are paying the dealer a membership fee. So you could compare that to a drive-off fee in a leasing environment or a down payment, and that fee provides you access to inventory, and then you pay that monthly subscription fee while you're driving it. When you don't need the car, you return it, but your fee is your membership fee is in place. And I've seen people do 6-month membership fees, 1-year membership fees, 2-year membership fees. There's all these different variables in that way. I've seen no membership fees, and it's just access, right? I come in, I have a commitment to a 30-day subscription, or I have a commitment to a 6-month subscription. In those environments, you'll probably find that the monthly pricing is a little higher because, again, right, there's some unit economics that they're trying to address in their monthly because they don't get to spread it out, leveraging that access fee or that membership fee. Yep. But I would say, en masse, if you take from a 30,000 foot viewpoint of vehicle subscription, that the goal is to get the monthly subscription pricing equal to what someone would be traditionally used to seeing in a retail or a leasing environment. So it's flat. But really what you're doing is you're building in some convenience, right? And you're building in that flexibility. So I think that that's really where it'll end up, especially once the institutional lenders get more comfortable with the model, right? They're just not comfortable with the model yet, and sometimes good things take some time. But I've seen pockets of institutional lenders, traditional auto-specific lenders, they're getting there. Once OEM finds a way to do it, and again, this is a nice little segue into the OEM portion of the vehicle subscription discussion, is it really works well in the pre-owned environment, because what you're dealing with is a evaluation of an asset that's a little bit more rigid, right? In the brand new inventory, you're always going to deal with that big cliff of depreciation over the first 3, 6, 9, 12, 16, 18, 24 months that kind of make the unit economics a little bit more difficult. But what I will say is that you have some OEM that are embracing it, and they're embracing it in a few different ways. Some of them are embracing it in like a long-term test drive, right? It's just another way to get people into retail, into a traditional channel. That's fine too. But, CPO, certified pre-owned, looked really foreign a while back as well. And OEM really, I think, got its arms around it, saw that it really was a new business channel that they could leverage. It gave them a place to put lease return vehicles or aged old stock type vehicles. And I think the same thing is going to happen for vehicle subscription. And I think that's the reason why I'm so passionate about it. Not only because I love the model, but I think we're still at our infancy, right? So in our infancy, a small independent contractor like me from in the middle of the Pacific can still have a pretty decent, maybe a decent input, right, and move the needle a little bit more in this specific channel than I would in any of the other more traditional channels in auto.
I like the one point that you said about the OEMs getting involved with it, and just the more of a used vehicle aspect, more of a pre-owned vehicle aspect. It's great because you could have someone that they don't have a lot of money to spend on a vehicle. They don't want to buy one, so they're going with a subscription model. So they go with a pre-owned one because they still don't have much money to work with, but they still need to go back and forth from work every day. They can get a pre-owned vehicle, it'll probably be somewhere around, let's say, 150,000 kilometers, so around 200,000 miles by the time you get it, a pre-owned subscription model. And maybe then they're driving it, and no one ever buys the car at that dealership, and they just keep paying subscriptions, and they love the car, and they keep using that same vehicle over and over and over, and it lasts forever because the dealership stays up on maintenance. It's not a consumer-owned vehicle, and that's where a lot of vehicles fail, is because consumers owns it. They don't stay up on the maintenance. They don't stay up on their oil changes, their services, and that's why a lot of vehicles fail sooner than they should, is because they're not getting that maintenance available. So, like you said, vehicles are going to last longer. Dealerships can make quite a bit of money off of that one customer who loves their old vehicle and keep driving the old vehicle, and they're probably going to get a hell of a deal on the subscription model for however many years they're driving it, but the dealership's still making money, and they don't have to lose it by trying to sell it at an auction or spend the time to even sell it at an auction as well. So I love the vision behind it. What are some of the biggest misconceptions about vehicle subscriptions you see among dealers and the buyers today?
Yeah, from a dealer perspective, I think they view it oftentimes as a disruptor, right? And I think from a business standpoint, it's kind of the cool thing to be the disruptor, right? You're going to come in and you're going to change the world. And I think what I've learned in my time working in a dealership, and then obviously building this model and the culture of vehicle subscription, is I think that the quickest path to adoption is value add, right? It's a term that I use frequently, especially when I'm talking to dealers. It's how do we add value to the offerings that you're already, putting out there? And if you can see vehicle subscription there, it reduces that pain point. And I think from a consumer standpoint, it's almost, it's twofold. I think one is some people just like to buy cars, right? They want to buy their car. They want to own their car. And if ownership is a big thing for you, then great, right? Then that's fine. Excuse me. And again, that's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to remove ownership, from the marketplace. But the other thing is that sometimes they feel like it's too good to be true, right? So it's, what do you mean I get to drive this car, and if I don't want to drive it anymore, I can simply return it? Right? But what's happened is, as more and more of our life is inundated with subscription type businesses, it's almost becoming something that people expect, right? I don't want to go to the movie theater. I want to watch a movie. I want to
Yeah.
do it when I don't want to go to a theater. I want to be at home. I have access to this library of movies, very, very similar to your vehicle. And I think what's going to end up happening, and it's something that I often talk about to dealers, lenders, and all the other people that I speak to vehicle subscription about, is technology, right? Technology continues to be at the hub of all of these new innovations, right? And we look at traditional dealers, to the traditional dealer model. I look at it kind of similarly to maybe the traditional restaurant model, which is, yes, you've got DoorDash, and yes, you've got Uber Eats, and we've kind of got into this different culture of eating, but nothing replaces that interaction you have with a great server at a restaurant,
For
or
sure.
a great host or maitre d' at a restaurant. There are some industries that still need that human touch, right? So, we'll hear stories about, oh, we'll lose our jobs to AI and all those other kind of things. And I certainly believe that AI is definitely changing the landscape of employment. But there are some traditional businesses, and I think auto is one, that people still want to test drive. AI does
For
not
sure.
provide me a test drive, right? Technology does not provide me a test drive. But what technology does sit at the middle of in vehicle subscription is the access point. So if I know that I'm going to have access to quality transportation, but I don't own that vehicle, it's more acceptable for me to do my transaction completely online because it's not my car, right? So I don't have to test drive that car because I think I'm going to be making payments on it for the next 3 years, 5 years, or 7 years. I'm just getting access to a car, and I can do that through the technology. And I think the other thing that the technology offers is it offers that bridge between the lender, the consumer, and the dealer. And that's really, something that's at the core of what I'm about, even through my consultancy at VYCL, is talking to technology groups who are trying to build the right software that integrates lenders, dealers, and consumers to kind of create this portal for vehicle subscribers that kind of flatten the field. I think what it does is it lowers prices, it creates opportunity, and then it makes the adoption, especially from the lending side, because lending is all about de-risk, right? They're just trying to de-risk themselves, on the money that they're lending. It allows them another opportunity to get into the vehicle subscription world in a more comfortable manner that they might be used to in a retail world or a leasing world, where their matrix for risk assessment in those two channels are tried and true. They know how to manage the risk, right? Using traditional FICO or income assets on the retail side, or on the leasing side. And I think that technology is going to help us there as well. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how that piece grows in vehicle subscription. I think it kind of builds it all together.
For sure. Yeah. That's another great point that you added is the technology aspect behind it, right? Like you said, I agree with you. I don't think AI is truly going to take over a lot of jobs. It's going to be used for the next few years at least. I hope. But I do agree. I do agree with you. I don't think it's going to take over many jobs at the moment. It's going to be more of a job enhancer, making jobs a little bit easier, making jobs a little bit better. Everyone getting a little bit quicker, more efficient, etc. But people still want human interface interactions.
Yeah.
People still want to buy from people. People still want to deal with people. So,
And I think auto is one of those unique industries
for
that
sure.
will always, and even in my short time in auto, right, again, just about a decade in auto, I've seen how technology has changed so much in just a decade. But I think auto is one of those institutional businesses that's always going to need a handshake. It's always going to need a little bit of a face-to-face. It's always going to need that part of it. And I think, in that way, vehicle subscription, I think, kind of blends the best of both worlds, right? It's for the user who may be more technology driven, who may want to interface a little bit more remotely, but at the same time, they're still going to have to physically pick up a vehicle. They're still going to be driving that vehicle. They still want to talk to people in that way. And that's why I think that vehicle subscription, go back to an earlier point I made, I don't look at it as a disruptor. Maybe once upon a time, maybe I was a little bit more cavalier about it, and I was like, yeah, this is going to change the world, and I'm going to be the guy that does it. And that's really not the way that I look at it anymore. I really think about it as value add. I think about it as helping a niche, helping a segment of the market, and really, it might be the more underserved part of that market, right? If we truly get the place where lenders are underwriting assets, not drivers, and we're creating an environment where we're de-risking all the proper channels, maybe now we're getting some people who, in an underserved part of our community that always needed access to quality transportation but couldn't afford it, or didn't want to get into that vicious cycle of some of those payments, maybe we now touch them. And now maybe that helps the workforce. Maybe now that helps our families, right? There's a lot of more maybe touchy-feely parts to vehicle subscription that maybe we don't need to get into today. But I do believe in quality transportation being at the core of alleviating a lot of our issues. And if vehicle subscription is just another way for us to help that part, right? Getting people access to great transportation, then I'm all for it. And I think that that's something that's really going to move the needle for adoption going forward.
For sure. I totally agree with you. If a dealer wanted to get started with vehicle subscription, what are some of the main steps they need to do to get started? Obviously, come speak to you. But what else?
I was kiddingly telling my wife this morning before I got on this call that I'm really not into the self-promotion thing. It's just not kind of who I am. I'll talk about vehicle subscription all the time, but not always that comfortable telling people that I'm the person that you have to talk to. But really, I think from a dealer standpoint, whether you're a single roof dealer or you're a multi-roof, larger dealer group, I think what you need to do is first embrace that it's a product that can be offered as a value add. The second thing I think you need to look at is do you have access to the proper technology that makes it seamless? I work with some great technology partners for customer-facing technology, for DMS integrated technology, for lender interfacing technology that I think is really key. Because what you don't want to have to do is you don't want to have to retrain your staff, right? You don't want to have that, again, I use the word disruption in your daily work. But if you feel like you want another way to manage, manipulate, and leverage your inventory, and you feel like you want a way to grow your revenue through an additional product that you can offer in a relatively seamless fashion, I think every dealer, whether you have 100 vehicles in inventory or you've got 5,000 vehicles in inventory, I think every dealer can really leverage vehicle subscription and make it the means for you to grow your business.
Mm-hmm. That's dealerships out there. If you're looking for something to do, if you're looking to add a little bit extra income, come 2026, there you go. You know who to talk to. I
recently helped a dealership, and they were from day one to their first subscription was 45 days. Wow. And that included training, that included onboarding their technology, that included working with their institutional lender to build a lending facility. There's quite a few moving parts, but at its core, it's a relatively simple idea. It just really takes a little bit of a little training and know-how, and really it takes investment, and not monetary investment. It takes investment by that dealership, that dealer group, or that general sales manager or that owner to say, you know what, we want to see this thing through. We were going to invest some time and energy into it. It can be done relatively quickly.
For sure. Ryan, looking ahead with VYCL, what are some of the goals that you have for the company? Where do you want to take it? What's your inspiration and mission behind it?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I think when I first started it, it was not really much about monetization or even needle moving. It was more of a project that I had because I was passionate about it and I wanted kind of an outlet to do it. What I've learned, over this past, 6 or 7 months since I've been doing it, is there's an appetite for knowledge about vehicle subscription. So I see myself as someone who just kind of is on the road, having calls like this, having discussions like this, just talking to people about it. And certainly, I'm as much a capitalist as anybody else. I'd love to monetize it. I'd love to be retained by as many dealer groups as possible to help them install and run their subscription businesses. But really what I want to do is I want to get it to the point where I've worked and helped enough dealers out there do it that the adoption kind of hits that 51% mark, right? We're not trying to convince people anymore. And then it has this organic growth on its own, where more and more consumers see it as a viable option for them. They're walking into their traditional dealers. They're looking at their websites in the traditional auto space going, do you offer subscription? Do you offer subscription? Do you offer subscription? I don't believe that my asset-light dealer model is the only way for it to be. It's just my way. It's the way that I know. It's the way that I feel most comfortable talking to people about. But like many industry and like many things, everybody's going to have a different approach to it. And I think that that's great, right? I mean, it could be the Ubers and the Lyfts. It could be the AMC Regal Theaters. It could be all, whatever, name a chain that sells a hamburger. And everybody thinks they've got a different way of doing it. But what's certain is that consumers love hamburgers, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the way that I see myself in VYCL, is just being at the tip of the spear. I've got the time and the energy to have these discussions and as different dealers, as different, maybe even OEMs, maybe different lenders start to embrace the concept of vehicle subscription, they have their own take on it. That's great, right? The more people who are playing in the space, at the end of the day, the winner is the consumer. And I think for me, that's really what I see on the end goal, is that we created in some way this new way for consumers to win, right? It's just another opportunity for them to win. And I think that that's something that if I were to look back on it, maybe 6 months from now, 12 months from now, maybe 5 years from now, if I see that we move the needle just a little bit and there's a consumer group out there, a segment out there that's benefited by vehicle subscription, I feel pretty good about it.
For sure. Yeah, no, totally. I love the vision behind it. I love what you're trying to do. You're trying to help the people at the end of the day, because it is something in every economy that does need help, is the people need help. And there's not many people that stand up for other people. A lot of people like to stand up for themselves, but at the end of the day, we do need more people standing up for other people. So I love the vision behind it. What are some of the challenges holding you back from reaching some of these dealerships, helping them out, helping the consumers out at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think the biggest pain point that we have right now in adoption is the financing, the lending component, right? There isn't a institutional bank lender in the country that I can't interface with on my phone or walk into a branch and say I need a car loan. They all offer car loans, right? It's just tried and true. But if as a consumer, if I walk into those same institutions, or I log into the same app on my phone and say, I want to subscribe to a vehicle, is there a lending facility? Is there something that's available to me to do that? It just simply doesn't exist. And that's why the lending component is the biggest pain point in true adoption. But we're getting there, because all it takes is that one institutional lender to kind of see a through line to it. And there's enough, there are far enough more test cases out there right now. There's enough connectivity to some institutional facilities like retail lending, like leasing, like rental. They're out there. And maybe it's a guy like me who's trying to pull all of those pieces together that finally gets them all to connect. Maybe. I certainly don't think that of myself as being that powerful, but the one dealer at a time is kind of how I look at it, is one dealer at a time. And there's certainly ways for an individual dealer to provide their own subscription lines, for lack of a better term, a subscription line of credit that they themselves can manage and use. I love to talk to them about how to do that and they're generally interested in it because, again, it's about monetization for them, right? How do I build this recurring revenue? And that's subscription. Subscription is this recurring revenue stream that all businesses look for, right? All businesses are looking for it. But, again, the biggest pain point now for true adoption is that institutional facility that exists that any consumer could tap into and say, I want to subscribe to this vehicle. I click this button and it's available to me. But we're not far away. We're not far away.
For sure. No, I totally agree with you there. Out of your experience through every journey that you've had, what are some of the most important lessons you've learned through your journey?
Yeah, I think I'm big on relationships. It's something that I've always been big on. I think it comes fundamentally from being born and raised in Hawaii, where we are literally 1 degree of separation away from knowing somebody, being related to somebody, having grown up with somebody because of our communal upbringing. And so relationships are extremely important to me. And I think that, when it comes to the sales channel, that we forget about that now, right? We always talk about, the funnel and my leads at the top of the funnel and how do I convert the top of the funnel leads down to a sale. I'm really about the relationships that I'm building from that top of the funnel down. And maybe it never turns out to a sale. Maybe it never turns out to a close. Maybe I'm having a discussion with a dealership that never embraces, vehicle subscription. That's okay. Because as long as my interactions with them have been respectful, if I've provided them great information, I was committed, I was consistent, I've built great relationships. I have made relationships that I refer people to where there was no sale to refer to, right? So I could be talking to dealer XYZ and say, hey, we have this common friend or common business associate. Give them a call, and their immediate reaction might be, oh, is he using your system, or are you a consultant of theirs? And I'll say no, but that doesn't. I don't want that to be the only reason why you use me. Call them, talk to them, because you might find that the reason why they're not using my service, or in this case, talking about vehicle subscription, might just not have been a good fit. But they might have really found some value in the way that I conducted myself and the way that I did my business. And I think for me, that resonates far wider, deeper, and longer than maybe just the closing of a deal, right? The closing of a sale. So relationships, big, really, really big with me.
For sure. Yeah, and it's big in business, right? Like you explained there, I couldn't explain it any better myself, so I'm not going to even try.
I look at you, right? I mean, you're starting on this new venture yourself and building building your media business, and you've chosen auto as kind of the hub of your growth. And I think we all go through some imposter syndrome type things as well. Maybe we don't think we're qualified or not, but as long as we're upfront with people, as long as we stand up for the things that we commit to, and we have great relationships, we communicate well, it grows, and it may not grow as fast as we want sometimes, but it's steady growth, and I think you can always fall back on it.
For sure, yeah. If you can build relationships, you're always going to have those people there to support you, motivate you, or just get information from if you need to as well, insights into the industry. It's a very great point that you brought up there. How can people reach you if they want to learn more about yourself, more about your consulting? Where can they find you, and how can they reach you?
Yeah, best thing is to go connect with me. You can go to our website, VYCL.ai. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn, and now they'll be able to connect to me through you and through Kortex. So that'll be awesome as well. I'm sure we'll put little links in the bios and things, and I'd love just to have a conversation. Just talk to people about vehicle subscription. Talk to them about my consultancy, how I think that I can help them, and just have a great conversation. I think a lot of good business just starts with one good conversation, and I think that this has been indicative of one of those good conversations. So I thank you.
Yes, I appreciate you coming on, Ryan. Thank you for taking the time, explaining your knowledge about vehicle subscription, kind of how you think it's truly going to add value to the industry, dealerships, consumers, etc. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. We'll talk again real soon.
For sure. Thank you, Ryan.
Take care, Korson. Thanks.